The room was silent. My sister's smirk stretched wider as she announced my rent would triple, right there in front of our parents. And do you know what they did? Nothing. Their silence burned deeper than her cruelty. But what she didn't know was that silence has a way of sharpening knives. My name is Lauren, and this is how I turned betrayal into justice. If you've ever been underestimated, betrayed by family, or left speechless by their silence, hit that like button right now. Subscribe for more real stories of revenge, and get ready, because this one will leave you breathless. My name is Lauren, and I used to think betrayal would come from strangers, someone outside my circle, someone I barely knew. But what I learned is that sometimes, the worst betrayal comes dressed in familiarity, in family ties, in the voices you've trusted since childhood. I grew up believing family was everything. My parents always said, blood is thicker than water. They repeated it like a mantra whenever conflict sparked between me and my sister, Vanessa. And I believed them. I really did. But as I got older, I started to see cracks in the foundation. Small ones at first. The kind you tell yourself aren't real, because it's easier to hold on to the illusion of harmony than face the truth that maybe, just maybe, the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones silently watching while you burn. Vanessa had always been the favorite. That wasn't paranoia, it was fact. Every birthday party revolved around her preferences. Every holiday dinner seemed to spotlight her achievements. When I got a promotion at work, my mom said, "That's nice, dear," before pivoting to Vanessa's latest shopping spree or her expensive vacation. I used to swallow it, smile, and tell myself, it doesn't matter. Just keep working. Just keep surviving. But then came the moment that shattered everything. It was a Sunday afternoon when my parents called a family brunch. I thought nothing of it. I slipped into my favorite old sweater, the kind that smells faintly of lavender after every wash, and tied my hair back. The house smelled of cinnamon rolls and bacon, the comfort food staples of our childhood. I walked in expecting warmth. Instead, the air was thick with something unspoken, something rehearsed. My dad sat stiffly at the head of the table, his coffee untouched. My mom busied herself with pouring juice, her eyes darting anywhere but at me. And then Vanessa cleared her throat. "Lauren," she said, her voice dripping with manufactured sweetness, "I've decided to raise your rent." I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. "Raise my rent?" "Yes," she said smoothly, leaning back in her chair as though she were some corporate boss delivering a verdict. "By 3 times. Effective immediately." The room blurred for a moment, my ears ringing. I laughed awkwardly, thinking maybe it was a sick joke. 3 times? Vanessa, that's insane. Her lips curved into a predator's smirk. "Oh, come on, Lauren. You should be grateful I let you stay there at all. It's business. Don't take it personally." I turned to my parents, desperation clawing at my throat. My mom's eyes dropped to her plate, as if the yolk of her scrambled eggs suddenly demanded her full attention. My dad shifted in his chair but said nothing. Not a word. That silence cut deeper than Vanessa's cruelty. My chest tightened, heat flushing through my body as I searched their faces for some sign, some shred of parental love, some ounce of fairness. Nothing. Their silence screamed louder than any insult. I swallowed hard, forcing the words out. You can't be serious." But Vanessa just tilted her head, her blonde curls bouncing as if mocking me. "I'm very serious. If you can't afford it, maybe you should find somewhere else to live. Maybe this will motivate you to grow up. Grow up." The words echoed in my skull like a hammer striking metal. I excused myself as quickly as I could, muttering something about needing air. Outside, the autumn wind slapped against my face, sharp and cold, but not as cold as the hollow inside my chest. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My body trembled, not just from anger, but from humiliation. She hadn't just blindsided me with cruelty, she had staged it. In front of our parents. And they had let her. The drive home was a blur. Street lights streaked past like ghosts, my vision clouded by unshed tears. At a red light, I slammed my fist against the steering wheel, the sound startling even me. "Why didn't you say anything?" I whispered to myself, voice raw. "Why didn't you fight back?" But the truth was, I'd been conditioned to accept silence. Conditioned to believe that speaking up meant I was the problem. And yet, as I pulled into the driveway of the very house she wanted to use as her weapon against me, a thought began to stir beneath the shame. Small, fragile, but there. If silence was going to be their weapon, maybe it could be mine too. Maybe silence could teach me something they weren't ready for. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the humiliation replayed like a cruel movie loop. Her smirk. Their silence. My own trembling voice. I clenched my fists beneath the blanket, whispering into the dark, "Never again." And for the first time in my life, I meant it. The next morning, I woke with a weight on my chest so heavy it felt like I'd swallowed a stone. Sleep had been impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, Vanessa's smirk reappeared, framed by the silence of my parents. The first thing I saw when I walked into my kitchen was the chipped mug I always used for coffee. The words on it read, "Home is where you feel safe." A gift from my mom years ago. I stared at it bitterly, because the home it referred to wasn't mine anymore. Not really. Vanessa had stolen that feeling with just a few words. I tried to shake it off, drown the memory with coffee, with work emails, with background noise. But humiliation lingers. It creeps into your bones. By the afternoon, a notification buzzed on my phone. A message in the family group chat. Vanessa had posted a picture of herself, hair perfectly curled, captioned, "Some people need to learn to pay their way in life. Nothing's free forever, winking face." My stomach flipped. She hadn't named me, but she didn't have to. Everyone knew. Cousins, aunts, uncles, they all saw it. Within minutes, one cousin messaged me privately, "Is this about you? What's going on?" I didn't respond. Shame glued my fingers still. Days passed, and Vanessa found new ways to rub salt in the wound. She called me during work breaks, leaving voicemails laced with venom cloaked in concern. "Lauren, I hope you're thinking about how you'll manage. I mean, it's not my job to carry you forever. Maybe this will toughen you up." It's a good thing, really. Every word pressed harder on the bruise she had created. At family gatherings, she began to twist the knife. One night at dinner, she joked loudly about how expensive it was to house dead weight. She laughed, clinking her wine glass, while everyone else shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I looked at my parents, desperate again for intervention. For once, I wanted my dad to slam his fist on the table and say, "Enough." For my mom to defend me. But all I got was silence. My father chewed slowly, avoiding eye contact. My mother smiled tightly, as though pretending nothing was wrong could erase the truth. It felt like drowning in plain sight while the lifeguards looked away. The humiliation grew louder outside the family, too. Neighbors whispered. One, Mrs. Halpern from next door, caught me one afternoon while I was unloading groceries. "I heard Vanessa raised your rent," she said casually, her tone dripping with curiosity. "That must be hard, dear." I forced a polite smile, my cheeks burning, muttering, "I'll manage." But inside, I felt stripped bare. Vanessa had turned my private struggle into public gossip. One evening, I came home from work and found an envelope shoved under my door. My hands trembled as I tore it open. Inside was a formal notice, typed, stamped, and cold. It stated that my rent was officially tripled, effective immediately. My breath caught in my throat. She had actually done it. I dropped into the chair at my kitchen table, the paper fluttering in my shaking hands. My chest heaved, a storm brewing inside me. For a long moment, I just sat there, staring at the words, the letters blurring into each other. Part of me wanted to crumble, to curl into myself and accept it. To let her win. After all, wasn't that the pattern? She attacked, I endured. She gloated, I swallowed my pride. My parents stayed silent, and I convinced myself silence was survival. But this time was different. This time, her cruelty wasn't just words. It was an eviction wrapped in a bill. A declaration that I didn't deserve security. Something inside me shifted. That night, I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I sat in my living room with the lights off, staring into the darkness, my heart pounding in my ears. My humiliation had turned into something sharper. I whispered into the silence of my house, "Enough." The word tasted foreign, like a language I hadn't spoken in years. But once it left my lips, I couldn't stop. Enough of her games. Enough of their silence. Enough of letting everyone else decide if I sink or swim. Tears streamed down my cheeks, but they weren't just from pain, they were from resolve. The next morning, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. My eyes were swollen, but behind them burned something new. A spark. I whispered again, "Never again." At work, I struggled to focus, the envelope still folded in my bag like a ticking bomb. But during my lunch break, I opened my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keys, trembling with both fear and adrenaline. If Vanessa wanted to make this about business, then I would fight her with business. I typed in the county property records website, my breath shallow as the page loaded. I searched the address of the house I lived in. My eyes scanned the screen, and then froze. There it was. Vanessa's name. But next to it, another name. She wasn't the sole owner. For the first time in weeks, my lips curved into a smile. The humiliation hadn't broken me, it had cracked me open. And through that crack, something stronger began to grow. The envelope sat on my kitchen table like a loaded gun. Every time I walked past it, my chest tightened, my stomach knotted. Triple rent. Effective immediately. No room for discussion, no mercy. For 3 nights straight, I didn't sleep. I tossed and turned, my mind replaying every humiliating moment Vanessa had staged. Her smirk at brunch. The group chat post. Her loud, cruel jokes at dinner. And through it all, my parents' silence, pressing against my chest like a stone slab. On the 4th night, something inside me cracked. I found myself pacing the living room, my hands shaking. Why am I letting her do this? I whispered into the dark. My voice trembled, but beneath it was anger, anger that had been buried for years, buried under obedience and silence. I stopped pacing and stared at the family photo on the wall. The 4 of us, smiling stiffly in matching sweaters one Christmas. My mom's hand on Vanessa's shoulder. My dad standing tall behind her. And me, cropped at the edge, as though I were an afterthought. I tore the photo down. The glass cracked against the edge of my coffee table, a sharp sound that echoed like a gunshot in the silence. "Never again," I whispered. My throat was dry, but the words came stronger this time. Never again will I be their silent punching bag. The next morning, I carried myself differently. My coworkers noticed it, my usually hunched shoulders were straighter, my voice steadier. I didn't tell them why, but I knew. Something had shifted. I pulled the rent notice from my bag during lunch and unfolded it slowly. My fingers no longer trembled. Instead, I studied it like a blueprint. A challenge. And then, almost without thinking, I opened my laptop and typed in the county's property records again. I stared at the screen. Vanessa's name was there, bold and arrogant. But next to it was another name, Aunt Margaret, our father's older sister. My pulse quickened. Margaret lived 2 states away, and though she'd always been distant, she wasn't cruel. I remembered her sharp wit, her independence. She was the kind of woman who didn't take nonsense from anyone. If she co-owned the house, Vanessa's power wasn't absolute. The thought sent a rush of adrenaline through me. My humiliation had blinded me before, but now? Now I could see a crack in Vanessa's armor. That evening, I sat at my desk, phone in hand, heart racing. I hadn't spoken to Aunt Margaret in months. What would she think if I called out of the blue? But I dialed anyway. The phone rang twice before her familiar gravelly voice answered. Lauren? Well, this is a surprise. I swallowed hard. Hi, Aunt Margaret. I hope this isn't a bad time. Never a bad time for family. What's on your mind, dear? Her warmth cracked something in me. My voice shook as I explained, Vanessa's cruelty, the triple rent, the humiliation in front of our parents. There was a long pause when I finished. Well, Margaret finally said, her tone sharper now, that little brat always thought she was queen of the world. What she doesn't know is I've been meaning to sell my share of that house for a while now. Maintenance is a headache, and I don't live there. If you're interested, Lauren, we can talk numbers. My breath caught. Are you serious? Dead serious. I'd rather the property go to someone who respects it. And frankly, Vanessa could use a lesson. For the first time in weeks, I laughed. It bubbled out of me, wild and disbelieving. That night, I didn't cry myself to sleep. I stayed awake drafting a plan. I combed through my savings account. Years of careful scrimping, of saying no to vacations, of working overtime shifts, of eating ramen for a week after paying bills, it had all added up. Not millions, not even six figures, but enough to make a down payment on Margaret's share. Every spreadsheet I made, every number I crunched felt like a step toward freedom. Toward justice. I imagined Vanessa's face when she realized her victim had become her equal. The thought alone sent electricity through my veins. Still, fear whispered in the corners of my mind. What if Margaret changes her mind? What if Vanessa finds out and blocks me? What if I fail? But another voice rose louder, the one that had been born the night Vanessa humiliated me at brunch. The one that said, enough. Failure meant continuing as I was, humiliated, erased, silenced. That wasn't an option anymore. 2 weeks later, I drove across state lines to meet Margaret in person. My palms were sweaty on the steering wheel, but my resolve was steady. Her house smelled faintly of old books and strong coffee. She welcomed me in with a hug that felt sturdier than anything my parents had given me in years. I'm glad you came, she said, leading me to the kitchen table where the paperwork sat neatly stacked. Let's make this official. As we signed, my hand still trembled, but not from fear. From power. When I slid my pen across the last line, Margaret leaned back and smirked. You've got guts, Lauren. I like that. Don't let that sister of yours bully you anymore. You own half now. Act like it. Her words were a key turning in a lock inside my chest. I walked out of Margaret's house that day not just as a tenant anymore, but as a co-owner. On the drive home, I replayed Vanessa's smug voice in my head, the way she'd called me dead weight. I gripped the steering wheel tighter and smiled. Let's see who's dead weight now, I whispered. The humiliation that had once suffocated me had been transformed. It wasn't pain anymore, it was fuel. And Vanessa? She had no idea what storm was about to hit her. 2 weeks later, the knock came. Sharp, impatient, unmistakably Vanessa. I had just finished my morning coffee when her silhouette appeared in the frosted glass of my front door. Her heels clicked against the porch, each step like a drumbeat of arrogance. I opened the door, and there she was, smug as ever, holding another pristine envelope in her manicured hand. Her perfume wafted into my living room like a suffocating cloud. Lauren, she said with her syrupy condescension, this is your final reminder. Rent is officially tripled starting next month. No exceptions. She slid the envelope onto the side table by my door without waiting for me to take it. Normally, I would have felt my stomach drop. My voice would have caught. My hands would have trembled. But not today. Today, I smiled. Actually, Vanessa, I said softly, letting the words hang in the air like bait, you might want to read this first. Her brows pinched together as I pulled my own envelope from the counter and handed it to her. She tore it open, scanning the papers quickly. At first, her lips curled into a smirk, as if she was ready to dismiss whatever pathetic attempt I had made. But as her eyes darted across the lines, property ownership transfer, co-owner rights. 50% stake in parcel, her smirk faltered. Her head snapped up. What the hell is this? My smile widened. It means, dear sister, that I'm not just your tenant anymore. I'm your partner. Your equal. Half of this house belongs to me now. And that means, I leaned in just slightly, lowering my voice, every decision you make has to go through me. For the first time in years, Vanessa had no words. Her face drained of color, and the silence that followed was delicious. The kind of silence that used to crush me now wrapped around her throat instead. She stormed past me into the living room, waving the papers like they were forged. You can't do this. This is my house. Correction, I said calmly, following her inside. It's our house. 50-50. I bought Aunt Margaret's share. Her eyes widened further. Margaret? That meddling hag. Careful, I cut in, my voice sharp now. She was more willing to help me than you ever were. Vanessa opened her mouth, then closed it. Her hands trembled as she shoved the papers back at me. This doesn't change anything. Oh, it changes everything, I said evenly, savoring each word. You don't get to triple my rent anymore. You don't get to throw me out. You don't get to humiliate me while I beg for scraps. From now on, Vanessa, if you want to change anything about this property, even so much as a coat of paint, you'll need my signature. Her jaw clenched, her nostrils flaring like a bull ready to charge. You sneaky little. Smart, I corrected. Not sneaky. Smart. The silence stretched thick between us, but this time, it wasn't me drowning in it. It was Vanessa. Finally, she spun on her heel and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. I stood there, breathing slowly, letting the moment sink in. For the first time in my life, I had stopped her. For the first time, I had power. Over the next few weeks, Vanessa tried everything to claw it back. First came the yelling. Angry voicemails calling me ungrateful, pathetic, a leech who didn't deserve anything. Then came the bargaining. Maybe we can work something out, she said sweetly one night, as if her words at brunch had never happened. If you just sell your share back to me at a discount, I'll let this whole thing go. I almost laughed in her face. And finally, the guilt trips. Mom and Dad are so stressed because of you. Do you really want to tear the family apart over this? But every tactic bounced off me like rain against glass. Because now, I wasn't the weak, silent little sister anymore. I was her equal, and worse for her, I was the one with patience. One afternoon, I attended a family gathering, this time with a secret tucked into my purse. Vanessa strutted in as usual, her voice filling the room, telling anyone who would listen about her latest shopping spree. At dinner, she tried again to make me the butt of the joke. Some people don't know how to stand on their own 2 feet, she said loudly, her wine glass clinking as relatives chuckled awkwardly. I smiled politely, then reached into my purse and pulled out a crisp copy of the ownership deed. I slid it across the table toward her, my voice calm but sharp enough to slice through the air. Funny you should say that, Vanessa. Because as of last month, I own half your house. Gasps filled the room. Forks clattered against plates. My father's brows shot up, my mother's hand froze midair with a spoonful of potatoes. Vanessa's face went pale, then red, then pale again. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. I leaned back in my chair, savoring the silence, the same silence that once crushed me now hanging around her like a noose. For once, the family didn't look at me with pity. They looked at her. Later that night, as I drove home, the city lights blurred through my windshield. My hands were steady on the wheel, my chest lighter than it had felt in years. This wasn't just about the house anymore. It wasn't about rent or property or signatures. It was about finally proving, to her, to my parents, to myself, that silence doesn't equal weakness. That patience isn't the same as submission. That I could take every ounce of humiliation they threw at me and turn it into fuel. And the sweetest part? Vanessa hadn't even seen the full extent of what I was planning. Owning half the house gave me leverage. But leverage is only useful if you know how to pull it. And I was done staying quiet. Vanessa, of course, didn't take the news gracefully. The day after the family dinner where I revealed my co-ownership, she stormed into my driveway, heels clicking like gunfire. "You humiliated me," she shrieked, jabbing a manicured finger at my chest. "In front of everyone." I tilted my head, calm. "Funny. That's exactly what you did to me. Difference is, I used the law. You used cruelty." Her mouth opened and closed, her rage sputtering against my composure. For the first time, I wasn't trembling. I wasn't scrambling for approval. I was steady, unmovable. "Face it, Vanessa," I added softly, "you can't bully me anymore." Over the next month, I began exercising my rights as co-owner. Small things at first, requesting financial records, insisting on approving maintenance decisions, pointing out safety repairs that couldn't be ignored. Vanessa hated it. Every email I sent, every signature I required, chipped away at her illusion of control. At one point she tried to schedule a luxury remodel, new kitchen counters, high-end tiles, all without consulting me. I sent her a polite but firm notice, denied. The look on her face when she realized she couldn't move forward? Priceless. "You're ruining everything," she spat during one argument. "No," I replied evenly, "I'm protecting my investment. You should try it sometime." But the true climax came with the finances. You see, the house wasn't the endless cash cow she pretended it was. There were taxes, repairs, insurance. And now, every dollar she wanted to spend had to be split, or approved by me. At the next family brunch, she tried once more to put me in my place. "Lauren's making things so complicated," she whined to our parents. "She doesn't understand business. She's just dragging me down." I smiled sweetly, reaching into my bag. "Actually, I brought something to share." I laid out the latest financial report, every repair I'd flagged, every expense she'd ignored. The numbers told a clear story. Without my cooperation, the house was a burden, not a blessing. My parents' eyes widened as they scanned the pages. My father cleared his throat, uncomfortable. My mother glanced nervously between us. And then, in the silence that followed, Vanessa exploded. "This isn't fair. It was supposed to be mine. All mine," she cried, her voice cracking. But no one rushed to defend her. Not this time. For once, the silence wasn't crushing me. It was condemning her. The sweetest part came weeks later, when she tried to buy me out. She thought she could bully me into selling cheap, cornering me with guilt about family harmony. I declined, of course. "I'm in no rush, Vanessa. I'm patient. Let's see how long you can handle the bills without my help." Her face turned crimson, her lips twitching as she realized the trap. She had tried to use silence to erase me. But now, silence was my greatest weapon. I didn't need to yell, didn't need to gloat. All I had to do was wait, and let her frustration grow. The breaking point came when she finally confessed to our parents over dinner, "I can't afford it anymore. Lauren's ruining everything. I need her gone." But my father, for once, didn't look at me with disappointment. He looked at her. "You made this bed, Vanessa," he said quietly. "Now lie in it." The room went still. My mother's lips parted in shock, but no defense came. For the first time in my life, they weren't silent in my humiliation. They were silent in hers. That night, I sat on my porch with a glass of wine, watching the sunset paint the sky in streaks of gold and crimson. The same porch where Vanessa once stood, smirking, waving her eviction notice in my face. Now? I owned half of everything she had tried to use against me. The humiliation, the gossip, the silence, all of it had been fuel. And in the end, silence hadn't broken me. It had remade me. I whispered into the fading light, "Never again." And this time I smiled. Because I knew I meant it. Looking back, I realized something powerful. It wasn't Vanessa's words that hurt the most. It wasn't even the rent increase, or the humiliation in front of family. It was the silence. The silence of my parents. The silence of people who should have defended me, but didn't. That silence almost crushed me. It almost convinced me I was powerless, invisible, unworthy. But here's the truth, silence can destroy you, yes. But it can also become your weapon. Silence teaches patience. Silence forces you to observe, to bide your time, to gather strength while others underestimate you. And when the moment comes? Silence makes your strike sharper, cleaner, unforgettable. Vanessa thought silence meant weakness. She thought she could stomp on me without consequence. But all she really did was hand me the fuel to rise higher than she ever imagined. And in the end, the silence that once erased me became the silence that condemned her. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button right now. And tell me in the comments, have you ever been underestimated, only to turn the tables in the most satisfying way? I want to hear your stories. Don't forget to subscribe for more true-to-life revenge stories where karma doesn't just whisper, it roars. Because here, justice isn't silent. It speaks loud and clear.